No woman wants a man who comes with baggage. The words were not shouted, but somehow they hit harder because they were calm. They drifted across the wedding hall beneath warm chandelier light and landed right where Ethan Walker stood, one hand holding a small gift bag, the other wrapped gently around his daughter's fingers. 8-year-old Lily looked up at him without blinking. The music kept playing. Crystal glasses clicked softly. Guests smiled and laughed as if nothing had happened, but for Ethan the room had already gone quiet. The old converted barn outside Cedar Ridge had been decorated with white roses and golden lanterns, the kind of place built for second chances. Ironically, tonight was proving he no longer believed in them. Across the room stood Vanessa, the woman he had dated for nearly a year after losing his wife. She wore pale blue silk and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Beside her stood a tall man in an expensive suit, one hand resting proudly at the small of her back. Ethan had not known there would be an engagement announcement. He had only come because she said she still wanted Lily there. "You're a good man, Ethan," Vanessa had told him 10 minutes earlier near the dessert table. "You really are." He remembered nodding. But her eyes had drifted toward Lily. "Life with you feels heavy. A child, memories, responsibilities, it's just too much." Ethan had smiled politely because dignity sometimes looked like silence. He had learned that after too many nights sitting beside hospital beds and too many mornings packing school lunches alone. He squeezed Lily's hand gently. She leaned against him. "Daddy," she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart." Her small voice barely rose above the piano music. "Are we the baggage?" Ethan's chest tightened so suddenly he almost forgot how to breathe. The room blurred for half a second. Not from anger. Not from humiliation. From heartbreak. He knelt beside her, adjusting the little cardigan she wore over her yellow dress. "No," he said softly. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Lily studied his face like children do when they know adults are trying not to fall apart. Then she nodded once and wrapped her arms around his neck. The scent of cinnamon cake and fresh pine drifted through the hall. Outside, winter wind brushed against the windows. Somewhere near the stage, people applauded as Vanessa and her fiancé raised champagne glasses. Ethan stood slowly. He took Lily's hand again. "Ready to go home?" She looked back at the lights one last time. "Will someone ever pick us?" Ethan forced a smile. Maybe some people aren't meant to be picked. He looked toward the snowy parking lot beyond the glass doors where darkness waited quietly beneath the street lamps. Maybe they're just meant to keep going. Neither of them knew that less than 30 minutes later, on a lonely highway under cold December rain, a stranded woman beside a black Bentley would change everything. The snow had started turning into rain by the time Ethan Walker pulled his old Ford F-150 on a Highway 12. The windshield wipers moved back and forth with tired rhythm, pushing away thin silver lines of water while Lily slept against the passenger window, her yellow cardigan folded beneath her cheek. The heater hummed softly, uneven and stubborn, filling the cab with warm air that smelled faintly of coffee and pine from the small tree hanging beneath the mirror. Ethan kept both hands on the wheel. The road ahead stretched dark and empty beneath the December sky. He should have been thinking about home, about tomorrow, about lunchboxes and school pickup. Instead, he kept hearing the same sentence repeating in his mind. "Life with you feels heavy." He exhaled slowly. Beside him, Lily shifted in her sleep and murmured something he could not understand. Then, just past mile marker 43, he saw it. Black paint reflecting rain. Headlights dimmed. A luxury sedan sitting crooked on the shoulder with its hood raised toward the night. Ethan slowed immediately. He pulled over 20 yards ahead and stepped out into the cold drizzle. Rain tapped against his jacket as he walked back. A woman stood beside the car holding a flashlight in one hand and an umbrella that was losing the fight against the wind. She looked completely out of place on that lonely highway. Long camel coat. Dark. Boots. Hair the color of chestnut pulled loosely behind her neck. She glanced up when she heard his footsteps. Her expression was calm but tired. "Car trouble?" Ethan asked. She lowered the flashlight slightly. "That obvious?" He looked toward the open hood. Usually the raised hood gives it away. For the first time, her lips moved into something close to a smile. "Fair point." Ethan set his toolbox down. "Mind if I take a look?" She hesitated only a second. "Please." The engine was still warm. He checked the battery, wires, and fuel connections while rain drummed softly against metal. The woman stood nearby holding the flashlight steady. "You do this for work?" she asked quietly. "Mechanic mostly. Odd jobs when needed. Long night." Ethan tightened a loose connection and nodded. Something like that. She studied him for a moment. You look like a man carrying the whole world. Ethan almost laughed. Just groceries, homework, and a kid who thinks pancakes count as dinner. Her eyes shifted toward the truck where Lily still slept. The woman became very still. Your daughter. My best friend. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable. Just quiet. The kind that felt honest. Wind brushed through the pines lining the road. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed. Ethan closed the hood gently. Try it now. She stepped into the driver's seat. The engine came alive immediately with a smooth, low rumble. Relief crossed her face before disappearing behind composure again. She reached into her purse. Ethan raised a hand. Do not. She blinked. You fixed my car. It took 10 minutes. Still. He shook his head. Keep it. The woman looked at him differently then. Not like someone seeing a mechanic on a dark road. More like someone finding an answer she had not expected. Rain slid from the edge of her umbrella as she stepped closer. I never got your name. Ethan glanced toward his truck where Lily had just opened sleepy eyes beneath the dashboard light. Ethan Walker. She nodded slowly. Charlotte. He did not know it yet, but somewhere beneath the sound of rain and the glow of highway lights, fate had quietly remembered his name. 3 days passed after. The night on Highway 12, and Ethan Walker had already decided he would never see the woman beside the black sedan again. Life had a way of giving people small moments and taking them back before they meant anything. Monday morning arrived cold and bright over Cedar Ridge. Frost clung to fence posts. The bell above Harper Auto and Repair rang softly as Ethan pushed open the garage door at 7:15 with coffee in one hand and Lily carrying her lunchbox beside him. Daddy, do you think snow stays forever somewhere? She asked as they crossed the lot. Ethan smiled. Alaska probably gives it a pretty good try. She laughed and skipped ahead toward his truck. Then we should visit someday. One dream at a time, kiddo. The garage smelled of oil, old rubber, and fresh sawdust from the woodworking shop next door. It was familiar. Safe. Quiet. Ethan preferred quiet now. He had spent years learning that peace was not exciting, but it healed things. Around noon, he stopped by Miller Diner on Main Street for sandwiches. The bell above the door chimed. Warm air wrapped around him carrying the scent of coffee and apple pie. He almost missed her. Charlotte sat alone in the corner booth by the window, a notebook open in front of her and a cup of untouched tea cooling beside it. No designer entourage. No driver. No signs of wealth. Just the same calm face from the highway and eyes that looked like they noticed everything. She looked up first. Surprise flickered across her expression. Mechanic from the rain. Ethan gave a small smile. Woman with the dramatic engine trouble. That earned a quiet laugh. I was beginning to think you only existed on highways. He stood awkwardly for a second. Mind if I sit? Please. Outside the window, snow drifted lightly over Main Street. Inside, old country music played from a radio near the kitchen. They talked longer than either expected. Lily. The garage. Cedar Ridge. Charlotte spoke little about herself. She only said she was in town handling business and staying for a while. Ethan did not push. Some people carried stories the same way others carried scars. You learn not to touch them too quickly. Halfway through lunch, the diner door opened again. Lily rushed inside after school pickup from the neighbor across the street. Daddy. She stopped suddenly when she saw Charlotte. Ethan stood. Lily, this is Charlotte. The little girl adjusted her backpack strap and smiled politely. Hello. Charlotte looked at her as if meeting someone important. Hello, Lily. Then something unexpected happened. Lily pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket. I made this at school. She placed it on the table. A crayon drawing. One small house. One truck. One man holding hands with a little girl beneath a bright yellow sun. At the top were the words written in uneven letters. Team Walker. Charlotte stared at it longer than necessary. Her fingers rested lightly against the paper. Ethan noticed her eyes soften. That is beautiful, she said quietly. Lily grinned. Daddy says we are enough. Silence settled gently over the booth. The kind that arrived before truth. Charlotte looked at Ethan again, but this time there was something new in her expression. Not curiosity, not politeness, respect. And somewhere deep inside her carefully ordered world, something quiet had just begun to move. The invitation arrived on a Thursday afternoon tucked inside a cream envelope that looked far too expensive for Ethan Walker's kitchen table. Outside, snow rested quietly across the backyard fence while Lily sat on the floor coloring winter birds with markers that had seen better days. Ethan turned the envelope over once before opening it. Inside was a simple card. Dinner tomorrow evening. I owe you tea that did not go cold. Charlotte. Lily looked up immediately. Is that from Highway Lady? Ethan tried not to smile. Highway Lady has a name. I know, Lily said proudly. Charlotte. She returned to her drawing. You should go. Ethan leaned against the counter. Maybe. Lily stopped coloring. Daddy. Maybe is what you say when you already want to. Friday evening arrived colder than expected. Ethan almost stayed home twice. His best jeans felt too old. His jacket still carried the faint scent of engine oil, no matter how many times he washed it. But Lily stood in the doorway with her hands on her hips like a tiny judge. You fixed her car. She bought you dinner. That is called fairness. Ethan laughed despite himself. When did you become wise? 3rd grade. The restaurant sat 30 miles outside Cedar Ridge, overlooking frozen fields and rows of pine trees touched by snow. Warm lights glowed behind wide windows. Ethan stepped inside and immediately felt underdressed. Men in tailored coats. Women wearing silk and pearls. Soft piano music floated through the room. Then he saw her. Charlotte stood near the fireplace in a dark green coat, hair loose over one shoulder. She looked elegant without trying. When she noticed him, something softened in her expression. You came. Ethan slipped his hands into his pockets. Apparently my daughter believes in fairness. Charlotte smiled. They talked over dinner longer than either expected. Small things at first. Favorite places. Winter memories. Lily and school projects. Then the conversation slowed. The fireplace crackled softly behind them. Snow moved outside like drifting ash. You never talk about yourself, Ethan said quietly. Charlotte looked down at her cup. Maybe because people usually decide who I am before I speak. Ethan nodded once. That happens more than people admit. Her eyes lifted. And what do they decide about you? He looked toward the window. That I missed my chance. Silence settled. Warm. Thoughtful. Charlotte studied him. Do you believe that? Ethan smiled faintly. I used to build plans for the future. Now I build lunches and repair transmissions. That was not my question. He met her eyes. No. The answer came softer than he expected. I do not think I missed my chance. I think life changed the road. Charlotte held his gaze longer this time. Before she could reply, movement near the entrance caught Ethan's attention. 3 people in dark suits had entered. One of them approached their table immediately. Miss Bennett, the man said quietly. The board call cannot wait any longer. Ethan frowned slightly. Charlotte closed her eyes for half a second. The man lowered his voice again. The investors are asking for you. Investors? Board. Miss Bennett. The words landed slowly. Ethan looked at her. Charlotte finally turned back toward him. For the first time since the highway, she looked less like a traveler and more like someone carrying an empire on tired shoulders. I was hoping, she said softly, to have one evening where nobody remembered who I was. The drive back to Cedar Ridge felt quieter than the road there. Snow brushed across the windshield in soft white lines while the heater hummed low inside Ethan Walker's truck. The image stayed in his mind anyway. Miss Bennett. Investors. Board call. The woman from the highway was not simply passing through. She belonged to a world built from glass offices and numbers large enough to change cities. Ethan tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Beside him, Lily sat wrapped in her blanket with sleepy eyes. Daddy, she asked softly. Yeah. Is Charlotte important? He smiled faintly. Everybody is important. Lily shook her head. No, I mean rich important. Ethan looked at the road ahead. Street lamps drifted past like small moons in the winter dark. Maybe. Lily thought about that for a moment. She still smiled at me. Ethan said nothing. That was exactly what unsettled him. The next afternoon, the garage was unusually busy. Trucks lined the lot. Engines coughed. Radios played old country songs beneath the metallic rhythm of tools. Ethan was halfway under a pickup replacing brake pads when his phone buzzed. One message. Charlotte, can I stop by? 20 minutes later, a black SUV rolled into the gravel lot. Heads turned immediately. Men paused mid-conversation. Cedar Ridge was not used to vehicles that looked like they belonged in financial magazines. Charlotte stepped out wearing jeans, boots, and a cream sweater instead of the polished elegance from the restaurant. She carried a cardboard box in both hands. Ethan wiped grease from his hands. What is this? She held out the box. Peace offering. Inside sat apple fritters from Miller Diner. Lily's favorite. Ethan looked at her. You remembered. Charlotte shrugged lightly. Your daughter informed me they are basically happiness with cinnamon. He laughed before he meant to. For a few minutes the world felt simple again. Then Charlotte noticed the old metal cabinet beside Ethan's workbench. One drawer had been left open. Inside were folders, blueprints, and rolled engineering sketches yellowed by time. She pulled one halfway free. Her expression changed immediately. Who made these? Ethan froze. Old work. She unrolled the page across the bench. Detailed transport flow systems. Freight timing models. Fuel optimization designs. Notes written in careful handwriting. Charlotte looked up slowly. These are not mechanic sketches. Ethan took the papers gently from her hands. That was another life. Ethan. Her voice softened. These designs could save millions in logistics costs. He turned away. Sunlight slipped through the garage windows, catching dust in the air. I know. Charlotte stared at him. You knew? He nodded once. I had offers. Then why walk away? Silence settled. Tools clicked somewhere behind them. An engine started outside. Ethan looked toward the small office window where Lily sat doing homework with crayons spread around her. His voice became quieter. Because my wife was dying. Charlotte did not move. Hospitals. Treatments. School pickups. Nights on waiting room chairs. He swallowed gently. After she was gone, I still had Lily. He smiled toward the window. And she needed a father more than the world needed another design. Charlotte lowered her eyes. The garage suddenly felt very still. She had met billionaires who traded families for success. Men who built towers and lost themselves inside them. But standing in front of her was a man who had quietly given up a fortune just to keep one little girl from growing up alone. And for the first time in years, Charlotte Bennett felt something deeper than admiration. She felt respect that reached the heart. Winter settled deeper over Cedar Ridge during the next 2 weeks. Snow gathered along rooftops. Smoke rose from chimneys in soft gray ribbons. Life returned to its familiar rhythm for Ethan Walker. School mornings with Lily. Long hours at the garage. Quiet dinners beneath the warm kitchen light. But something had changed. Charlotte kept appearing in the spaces between ordinary moments. Coffee at Miller Diner. A visit to the Christmas market downtown. One afternoon helping Lily pick wrapping paper while pretending she knew nothing about glitter glue and third-grade crafts. Ethan noticed the way Lily laughed more when Charlotte was around. He noticed other things too. The way Charlotte listened instead of waiting to speak. The way she watched people as if trying to remember what mattered. Then the world shifted. It started with a headline. Bennett Logistics CEO spends time in small-town garage. By evening there were more. Mystery man linked to Charlotte Bennett identified as local mechanic and single father. Ethan found the article while wiping down tools after closing. His picture sat beside Charlotte's beneath words that felt colder than snow. Failed engineer. Widower. Small-town mechanic. The labels stung less than the comments beneath them. Why him? Public image risk. She deserves better. Ethan locked his phone and slipped it into his pocket. Across the room, Lily sat finishing homework with her crayons spread out like tiny soldiers of color. He forced a smile. Ready to head home? The next morning, Charlotte arrived earlier than usual. No smile. No apple fritters. Her eyes carried exhaustion. The board meeting lasted until midnight, she said quietly. Ethan nodded once. I guess something happened. She stepped closer. They want distance. Silence. Wind rattled the garage door. Somewhere outside, a truck rolled across gravel. They think this looks bad, she continued. A small-town mechanic. A single father. They are calling it emotional instability. Ethan looked down at the wrench in his hand. Strange. After everything life had taken from him, he had forgotten people still measured worth by titles. Charlotte's voice softened. I told them they were wrong. Ethan smiled gently. You should not have to defend me. I wanted to. He finally looked at her. Winter lights spilled through the windows, catching silver in her eyes. She looked hurt in a way success could not fix. Ethan placed the wrench down carefully. Charlotte. She held her breath. You built a company. Hundreds of employees. Investors. Responsibility. He paused. Do not lose peace because of me. Her expression fell. You think I care about headlines? No, his voice stayed calm. I think you care too much. Lily appeared, then carrying her backpack. Charlotte. The little girl smiled until she noticed the silence. Everything okay? Neither adult answered immediately. Charlotte knelt beside her instead. Just grown-up weather. Lily frowned. But it is not snowing. Charlotte brushed a strand of hair from her face. Sometimes storms happen inside. Lily thought about that. Then she quietly took Charlotte's hand. Daddy says storms leave. Ethan looked away toward the garage doors because suddenly the room felt smaller. He did not know that by nightfall he would make the hardest choice since losing his wife. He would disappear from Charlotte Bennett's world before she had the chance to choose him. People think leaving is loud. It is not. Most of the time it sounds like a truck engine starting before sunrise and a father quietly packing a lunch while pretending his heart is not breaking. Ethan Walker made his decision that night after Lily had fallen asleep. The kitchen light glowed over unpaid bills, school drawings, and the small paper from Miller Diner that still held Charlotte's handwriting. He folded it once and placed it inside the drawer with old photographs of his wife. Some memories stayed because they healed. Others stayed because they hurt honestly. By morning he had already called the garage owner. 3 weeks off. Maybe longer. You heading somewhere? The older man asked. Ethan looked toward the snow outside the office window. Just taking my daughter where nobody knows our names. 2 days later they were driving north toward Pine Hollow Lake, a quiet town nearly 100 miles away where Ethan's uncle owned an empty cabin used only during summer fishing season. Lily sat beside him holding a notebook against her knees. Does Charlotte know? She asked suddenly. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. No, why? Snow drifted across frozen fields beyond the highway. He waited before answering. Because sometimes caring about someone means stepping back. Lily frowned the way children do when adults make things too complicated. That sounds sad. Ethan smiled sadly. Maybe it is. Back in Cedar Ridge, the silence Ethan left behind felt larger than Charlotte expected. No truck outside the garage. No coffee at Miller Diner. No little girl waving from the window. At first she thought he was busy. Then Harper called. He left town. The words hit harder than board meetings ever had. Charlotte stood inside her office overlooking downtown Chicago while winter sunlight reflected against glass towers. Files sat open on the conference table. Executives waited. None of it mattered. Where? She asked quietly. Nobody knows. That evening she drove back to Cedar Ridge herself. The Walker house stood still beneath fresh snow. Curtains closed. Porch empty. The little wind chime Lily had painted moved gently in the cold air. Charlotte stood there longer than she should have. Then she noticed something tucked beneath the flower pot by the steps. A folded paper. She opened it slowly. Crayon letters. Team Walker. The same drawing from Miller Diner. On the back Lily had written one sentence. Families do not leave people behind. Charlotte closed her eyes. Somewhere deep beneath years of discipline and polished control, something cracked open. The next morning Bennett Logistics held its annual winter gala in Chicago. Investors. Reporters. Cameras. The ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers worth more than most houses in Cedar Ridge. Charlotte stood backstage listening to people discuss growth projections and public image recovery. One board member smiled. The mechanic's story faded quickly. Another nodded. Good thing. You need stability now. Charlotte said nothing. Her fingers remained wrapped around the folded drawing inside her coat pocket. Hundreds of miles away, Ethan and Lily arrived at Pine Hollow just before sunset. The lake stretched silver beneath snow. Smoke rose from distant cabins. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, Lily sat quietly on the porch steps after unpacking. Ethan joined her. You okay? She looked at him with eyes far older than 8 years. Daddy. Yeah. What if people are miracles and we leave before they happen? Ethan had no answer. Because somewhere inside him, he was beginning to fear she might be. Right. The ballroom lights shimmered like stars trapped beneath crystal while hundreds of guests filled the winter leadership gala of Bennett Logistics. Cameras flashed. Glasses clinked softly. Conversations drifted through the room in polished waves about acquisitions, expansion plans, and market forecasts. Charlotte Bennett stood behind the stage curtain, holding Lily's drawing inside her hand so tightly the paper had begun to crease at the edges. Team Walker. Families do not leave people behind. Those words had followed her all night. A board member approached again. Miss Bennett, the press is ready. We adjusted the statement about your recent personal distractions. Charlotte lifted her eyes slowly. Personal distractions? He smiled carefully. The mechanic situation. Silence. Soft piano music floated through the hall. Somewhere beyond the curtain her name was announced. Charlotte looked at the man for a long moment. Then she folded Lily's drawing and slipped it into her coat pocket. You still do not understand, she said quietly. That was never a distraction. Across the state line in Pine Hollow, snow fell gently over the frozen lake. Ethan Walker sat inside the cabin repairing one of Lily's broken mittens beneath the yellow kitchen light. The radio played old winter songs. The fire crackled softly in the stone fireplace. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, the room carried an ache he could not name. Lily sat near the window drawing again. She had been unusually quiet all day. Finally, she looked up. "Daddy." Ethan threaded the needle carefully. "Yeah. If somebody misses you, can you feel it?" His hand stopped. Outside, wind brushed against the pine trees. He smiled faintly. "Sometimes. Do you think Charlotte misses us?" He did not answer immediately. The silence itself became the answer. Back in Chicago, the ballroom darkened. Spotlights turned toward the stage. Charlotte stepped forward wearing black velvet and quiet determination. Applause rolled through the room. Investors smiled. Cameras lifted. The prepared speech waited on the podium. She looked at it once, then closed the folder. The room stilled. "Tonight," she began softly, "I was supposed to speak about numbers." A few polite laughs. "Growth. Strategy. Market confidence." She paused. "Instead, I want to talk about value." Faces shifted. The board table grew still. Charlotte looked across the crowd. "I met a man who repaired engines in a small-town garage." Murmurs began immediately. She continued anyway. "He gave up opportunity so his daughter would never grow up alone. He chose love over ambition, presence over success, grace over recognition." The room had gone completely silent now. "I built an empire," she said quietly. "And yet that man taught me what home feels like." Hundreds of eyes watched her. Cameras stopped moving. Charlotte reached into her pocket and unfolded Lily's drawing beneath the stage lights. "I do not need a powerful husband." Her voice trembled for the first time. "I do not need a perfect image." She looked straight into the crowd, as if searching beyond the walls themselves. "I need the man who taught my heart how to come home." Silence fell across the ballroom like snowfall. No applause. No whispers. Just stillness. In Pine Hollow, Ethan's phone rested face down on the table beside the fireplace. It began to vibrate. Once. Twice. Then again. Unknown numbers. Messages. News alerts. Ethan ignored them all, until Lily quietly picked up the phone and looked at the screen. Her eyes widened. "Daddy," she whispered. Ethan turned. Lily held up the display with trembling hands. Charlotte stood beneath 1,000 lights holding Team Walker for the entire world to see. Snow fell softly over Pine Hollow the next morning, turning the frozen lake into a sheet of silver beneath the pale winter sun. Ethan Walker stood on the porch holding a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. He had watched Charlotte's speech 3 times during the night after Lily insisted. Each time the same moment stayed with him. "I need the man who taught my heart how to come home." He still did not know what to do with words like that. Inside the cabin, Lily sat cross-legged on the rug, drawing another picture. When Ethan stepped back in, she looked up immediately. "Daddy." "Yeah." She held out the page. 3 people this time. 1 small house. Snow. Hay. Truck. And a woman standing beside them. Ethan smiled sadly. "You work fast." Lily tilted her head. "Do you still think some people are not meant to be picked?" He looked at the drawing, then at his daughter. "I do not know anymore." A knock sounded at the cabin door. Once. Quiet. Then again. Ethan frowned. Nobody knew they were there except his uncle. He opened the door slowly. Charlotte stood outside beneath falling snow. No black SUV. No assistants. No cameras. Just a wool coat, flushed cheeks from the cold, and uncertainty in her eyes. For a moment nobody spoke. The wind moved gently through the pine trees. Somewhere across the lake a bird called into the winter silence. Lily appeared behind Ethan and gasped. "Charlotte." The little girl ran forward and wrapped her arms around her waist before anyone could stop her. Charlotte knelt immediately and held her carefully. Her eyes shimmered. "I missed you too." Ethan stood frozen. "How did you find us?" Charlotte looked up. "Your uncle owns the bait shop by the marina." A faint smile. "He is very protective of you." Ethan almost laughed. That sounded exactly right. Silence returned. The kind that arrives before truth. Charlotte stepped closer. Snow rested lightly on her shoulders. "I came because I am tired of being brave in boardrooms and quiet everywhere else." Ethan said nothing. She took a breath. "I do not care about headlines." Another step. "I do not care what people think." Her voice softened. "I care that you left without letting me choose." Ethan looked down. "I thought I was protecting you." "From what?" He finally met her eyes. "From carrying me." Charlotte smiled sadly. "Ethan, you were never wait." She reached into her coat pocket and unfolded Lily's drawing. Team Walker. The paper moved slightly in the cold air. Then she looked directly at him. "Be my husband." The world seemed to stop. No music, no cameras, no ballroom, just snow falling between pine trees and one little girl holding her breath. Ethan stared at her. Charlotte's eyes never moved away. Not because you fixed my car, she whispered. Not because you gave up dreams. Not because you saved me from loneliness. Her voice trembled. Because you showed me what love looks like when nobody is watching. Ethan knelt slowly in front of Lily. Sweetheart. She blinked quickly. Yeah. Do you think Daddy should believe in miracles again? Lily took his hand, then Charlotte's. She placed them together with both of hers. I think, she whispered, we already found one. Silence followed. Quiet. Sacred. The kind that does not need applause. Snow kept falling around the little cabin while three shadows stood together beneath the winter light. And somewhere far behind them the world kept chasing success, never realizing that sometimes the richest thing a person can own is simply someone who stays.